Hello folks, welcome to el canal de Chano Jose. Today we're going to give you an idea how to replace the lower control arm on a 91 to a 94 Toyota Tercel. And for this process we have to lift our car, the jack stands on both sides, and we take the wheel off. And then what we're going to be using is we're going to need a 17mm socket, and we're going to be using our impact gun to make the job easier. And then also we're going to need a 14mm socket for the ball joint, because we gotta disconnect the ball joint from the control arm. And then on this car we have the sway bar from the 92 to 94 Toyota Paseo. So if your car has a sway bar on, then you're gonna follow some of the steps. If it doesn't have it, then just ignore the steps on the sway bar, how to connect it and disconnect it. With that, we got our brand new control arm here, and we're gonna show you how to replace this control arm, so that way you can get an idea how you can do it. And with that, let's get started. This is our lower control arm. We're gonna get it out of the bag, but for us it was cheaper to replace the whole control arm than just replacing the bushings, because each bushing is about $20, and the whole control arm, it was $50. So it was cheaper for us to buy the whole unit and don't go through the trouble of taking it off or pushing the bushings out and not doing it right. So we just buy the whole unit, and then we can install it. For the price, it's cheaper to buy the whole unit than try to repair the bushings. So with that, we'll get it out of the bag and show you. So this is the new control arm. This is the bushing that goes towards the rear, and as you can see, has a flat part that it goes into the car, towards the car, and then the clamps it towards the car. And then the other bushing that goes towards the front, one bolt goes through right here, and then here the ball joint bolts down with these two studs and the one bolt right here. So the ball joint falls right in here and is bolted down with the two studs, and then you tighten it down from the bottom, and then you put the bolt through to tighten the ball joint on this area. And this hole is for the sway bar bushings or connecting link. It connects right here. So if your car has the sway bar and it has a connecting link, this is where it's gonna go. If it doesn't, don't worry about that step, but we'll show you how to take the other one off so we can put this brand new one in. First thing we gotta do is we gotta remove the sway bar connector link kit from the sway bar to the control arm. And if your car doesn't have this, don't worry about these steps. We're gonna show you how we do this, but if your car has it, your Tercel. Okay folks, so now what we have is we have to remove these two nuts, 14mm nuts, and this bolt as well, 14mm, to get the ball joint away from the control arm, so we can start continuing on taking the control arm off the car. Okay folks, so now that we have removed the bolt and the two 14mm nuts from the ball joint, now we can move the control arm down. All we have is left is a one bolt, this bolt here, 17mm bolt here, and then two bolts over here on a bracket that are 17mm, and we're going to show you how those are taking off so you get an idea what you're looking for. We have loosened that bolt, so now we're going to loosen the other ones on the clamps, the ones in the back, and then we're going to show you how those are. So these two bolts we have to remove. They're 17mm bolts, and we're pointing backwards right here, and over here where we put it in our hand now is in the front. There's the front of the car, so we gotta remove these two 17mm bolts. Okay folks, so we have one bolt in right now. We remove the bolt joint from right there. We loosen the front bolt, and then we remove the bracket bolts, what's holding the whole control arm, and there is just that bolt that is barely in there. So we remove it, and then we can take out the control arm. Okay folks, so this is the old control arm. The bushing is a little worn out, so this is the original from 93 Tercel, and this is the new one that we're installing. So this is going to help a lot in the ride, on how the car rides and drives. So now that we have the new one, we're going to compare it before we start putting it in, and then now that we know that is the same thing, we start putting it in, and then we start putting everything back on. So this is the clamp that goes underneath and clamps this like this. So that's how it's bolted on in the back with a clamp. So then this holds the control arm towards the car, and the two bolts go in here. So this is the actual tie down point, and on the other one the bolt just goes through. So that's how this is held, and the ball joint bolts down into this. So we put this back on. Okay folks, so now we have the control arm just sitting there. We have the ball joint here. This is the front of the control arm. So we're gonna put the long bolt through, and then we're gonna put the clamp or the one in the back with the two bolts, and then we're gonna present the ball joint into it, and then we start tightening everything down. When you're putting everything back together, what you want to do is you just want to get a couple threads going into of the bolt. You don't want to tighten it completely yet, because you want to put the bolt joint back in as well, and if you need to loosen a bolt to guide the other one in, you're going to have some trouble. So you just want to get a couple threads going, and then once we get everything preset, then we can tighten everything together. Now that we have put the bolt joint in, and when the bolts are all in, just barely in, we start tightening everything together, because we already have the control arm on place. So now we tighten that bolt, these three over here, and the two in the back. So now that we have tightened everything together, if you have a sway bar, you can put the link together and put it back into the car. And if you didn't have a link or a sway bar, then don't worry about this step. But we have a sway bar from a Paseo into this Tercel, so we're gonna put the link it to the control arm to the sway bar. That should finish your procedure on how to replace this control arm. So this is another reason we replaced it. See that cracked on the bushing, so we replaced it, and it was cheaper to replace the whole unit than just replacing bushing by bushing. And well folks, this is an idea how to replace your lower control arm on the passenger side of a 91 to a 94 Toyota Tercel. We replaced the whole control arm because it's cheaper than just pushing each bushing out and buying them individually. They cost about the same for the whole thing than just by. So it's cheaper. By doing that, you just take this one off, put the new one in. But before you put the other one in, compare it to see if it's what you are installing, because it might be a little different. So you want to make sure you're putting the right piece in before you start putting oil and all that stuff, so in case you need to return it or exchange it. So with that said, pretty simple. All we have to do is put our tire back on, lower the car, and then that should be done with our replacement on the lower control arm of our Tercel. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe. If you like this video, give us thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here in El Canal de Chano Jose.